different speakers to talk about the ethics required, talk about some of the niche areas we're going to collect data on, including bile duct injury, incidental gallbladder cancer, and one of the newer features of trying to do 1 year follow-up for this cohort. And then we've got our REDCap guru Omar to discuss how to best input data on REDCap. And that will summarize sort of today's meeting. We'll have plenty of time to take questions and do any troubleshooting for anything that's unclear. Next slide, Sivash. So yeah, I mean, we all know that cholecystectomy is very common. It's one of the most common general surgical operations done worldwide. And, you know, whilst individual countries have done quite a lot of gallbladder projects, this will be the first global project that will get data from all around the globe, specifically looking at differences between low, middle and high income countries. And we're hoping this will bridge several knowledge gaps in this area. Next slide, Sivash. So the aims are very much to look at this global variation, and the sort of audit standards are all detailed in the protocol, and I don't intend to go through them now. We do have some secondary aims looking at the quality and the safety of cholecystectomy. We're going to look at bile duct injury and its management. We're also going to look at the rates of unsuspected gallbladder cancer, and also look into training and see about there's some extra questions in this cohort study really about green surgery and things that are unique to give a unique flavor to these papers that are coming out. Next slide, Sivash. So the timeline of this study and the methods are very much based on REDCap. We've got a site survey that all sites will have to complete just as the study starts. And if you haven't done this already, this will be emailed to you, and we'll be chasing up some basic demographics of your hospital and what provision it has for scanning and emergency surgery, etc. As I said before, one of the unique parts of this study is the follow-up will be at 30 days, but also have longer follow-up for selected patients, mainly those that have a bile duct injury or have a cancer. Next slide, Sivash. So we're the first data collection period starts on the 31st of July, and we've got 8 possible 2-week data collection periods. Ideally, to make this study a success, we want as much data as possible. The reason to block them was to make sure that hospitals around the world could participate, because we realize that changeover dates are different and there's different things happening. But ideally, we want as much data as possible, and there's provision to allow extra collaborators for different time periods of collection. The idea is to lock the data set in January 2024, and that will end the timeline for the data collection for the 30-day part, but there will be extra year follow-up for those with gallbladder cancer and bile duct injury, and we can talk a bit about that in the next section. We've had a fantastic response. Our team have been advertising via the national leads. We've also done stuff on Twitter and other social media platforms, and we've had 1,775 hospitals who've expressed an interest. And the plan now is to really focus down on those hospitals that are interested and get them to fully register get all the local ethics and all the requirements for them to submit data to us. And it's going to be a really exciting and massive study, and we can't wait to work with all of you to do that. Next slide, Savesh. So yeah, that's me with the introduction. Savesh, I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Griffiths. I can see there's no questions here at present in the chat box. So we'll carry on to the next presentation today. So Steve Knight is one of the Gecko steering committee members and also a surgical trainee based at University of Edinburgh. Very warm welcome to Steve for presenting on the next topic for today on ethics for this study.
Thanks for the kind introduction, Savesh, and it's lovely to see everyone join, not only kind of new collaborators, but people that we've worked with previously on different GlobalSurg projects. Next slide, please, Savesh. So I'm going to keep this quite short, which perhaps you'll all be grateful for. So ethics is certainly something which is very important to make sure the study runs smoothly. But hopefully a lot of this will have either been done or be in due process at the moment. So there's two major classifications based on what ethical approval you may need. And we basically split that into research and audit. So with a lot of our international collaborators, this will be deemed a research study. And that may well mean that you need formal ethics approval, which is either done on a local, a regional, or a national level, and that's based on local policy. Certainly it's responsibility of the local leads to determine whether it needs to be classified as research and to get the most appropriate research approvals in place before data is entered onto REDCap. Now, particularly in the UK and perhaps in other certain countries, and this would be classified as an audit. So essentially determining what's happening now using routinely collected data. That would generally be require a national agreement, which has been already secured in England via the University of Birmingham and is currently in process of being secured in Scotland. It would still need to be registered as a local audit or service evaluation at your local hospital. And again, that would be the responsibility of the local hospital lead. And again, as with research, no data should be entered onto REDCap until the particular ethical approval has been provided. Next slide, please, Savesh. There's also certain hospital leads and national leads that have asked for a DTA. Now, I know there's been quite a few questions about when this may be available, and it's in process of being finalized. The reason this is not available yet is it does take some time to discuss with the University of Edinburgh team in order to make sure that the clauses are all correct before we can send it out. This essentially covers how we manage de-identified data, which is entered into REDCap, how it's secured, how it's curated, and how it's analysed and disseminated. Once we have further update about when we're able to share this DTA, we'll let you know, and hopefully we can get this moving quite quickly. Next slide, please. And what happens if you're awaiting ethics, as I discussed on the first slide? Well, we can certainly use the CRF or case report form, which is shown here on this slide. And this is where you can collect data while you're waiting for ethical approval. It needs to be secured in a locked environment, such as a doctor's room. And then once we have approval at your local centre with ethics, in order to enter the data onto REDCap, you can transfer the paper records into REDCap sequentially. Are there any questions at all?
Thank you, Steve. So there are no questions at the moment from the chat. However, I'll ask a question, I guess. There's a lot of people asking about the local policies in terms of ethics and if we should be sending the approved ethics to us centrally. What are your thoughts in that, in terms of before the study starts?
I think the key thing is that ethical approval is achieved and it's ready to be disseminated if required. Certainly, I think if you have the approval and you're good to go in terms of entering data, then perhaps it's good to touch base with your national leads to see whether they would need a copy or it needs to be nationally secured. But I think that would be on a country by country basis.
Thank you very much, Steve. And I guess one more question, I think, from Tom Weiser, who's on the call. Question being, can data be stored electronically on REDCap prior to sending over and prior to formal approval by local IRB?
No, it would need to be kept on a paper form before it can be entered electronically, just due to the kind of ethical approval and DTA.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks very much, everyone. So we'll move on to the next speaker, who will be talking about bile duct injury, which is one of the key sort of features of the Gecko study, where we look to include 1-year follow-up. So to speak on bile duct injury, Rich Evans is a surgical trainee based at University of Birmingham. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks, Devesh. So as Mr. Griffiths alluded to, we've got a unique opportunity here to sort of look at complications and problems after cholecystectomy that are relatively infrequent. I think we all appreciate that bile duct injury is pretty catastrophic and has long-term impacts on our patients. And through both 30-day and 1-year follow-up, we're going to be able to really get a real-world global view and global understanding of how people diagnose and manage this problem. So, I mean, as I mentioned, we'll look at both 30 days and 1 year. And hopefully none of us will be seeing cholangiograms like this, but inevitably at sort of I think I've got control Sivesh, so it's working my end just to let you know for me controlling the slides. But we're going to look at exactly when it's diagnosed, whether it be intraoperatively, postoperatively, and whether that's from drains, imaging, or mainly. We're going to be looking at, and we're going to be asking you to record injury relative to Strasbourg classification, which you can see here. This is going to be a uniform approach that we can all do, so we don't muddy the water and we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. I think we all appreciate if the bile duct's injured in complicated cholecystectomy, that we can have an associated vascular injury. We're going to be looking at data and we're asking you about that on our case report form. Global variation also occurs in how we confirm a bile duct injury. I mean, I appreciate and one of the benefits of the study is we're looking across high, middle and low income countries, and we have different resources, different infrastructure, and how people use that to diagnose and then subsequently manage the problems. I mean, certainly in the UK, we have small and large hospitals, and not every hospital has the capability of managing complex bile duct injury. So we're going to be asking you about whether you have to refer your patients on, but equally, we're going to be asking you to then capture that data and follow those patients up. So if you do refer your patient on to a tertiary centre, then we're going to be asking you to get in contact with those hospitals to manage that and understand it, so we can get a full grasp of what management you're doing in the hospital, or whether colleagues at a distant centre have done that. So that's just an example of the World Emergency Surgery Guidance. And we're going to be asking you to capture the complex details of management and surgery and ERCP and things like this. So one of the benefits of the study overall is that we're going to be doing the 1-year follow-up. Stricture rates increase, certainly after HEP-JEG over a year. And this is going to be some of the interesting points that we'll find, or hopefully be able to relay back to you over time. So it's all in the protocol, it's all on the case report form. Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Thank you very much for that, Rich. There's not been any questions so far related to bile duct injury, but I will ask you a question if that's okay. One of the issues being the 1 year follow-up. There's some concerns about the ethics around 1 year follow-up for bile duct injury. What are your thoughts around how it might relate to the audit standards that we have for management of bile duct injury in Gecko?
Well, I suppose we could split that into two groups, couldn't we? I suppose those who require nationally defined research ethics, and I think we should encompass that into the centres and countries that need specific research. With regards to audit specifically and following people up, if someone's had a bile duct injury, it will be part of their routine post-operative course that they're followed up and looked after. So we are not asking for any additional management. This is observation, and I think audit in those countries where that's appropriate, such as the UK, will be fine. And
a slightly tricky question here from one of the collaborators regarding the Calix triangle. So a lot of it is related to laparoscopic surgery, and it's a question about data collection pertaining to centers where they do predominantly open. How would you go about sort of addressing that data collection process if it's all open operations?
Well, the data collection or the data points will be the same for open and laparoscopy. So it's sort of, if we start off with diagnosis, when it's diagnosed intraoperatively or postoperatively, the nature of the original surgery doesn't matter, and the management points thereafter won't differ based on technique and how you choose to do your surgery.
Thank you, Rich. So now we'll move on.
I think Brian Davis might have a question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thanks very much. Great study. Just a couple of simple questions. In the protocol, from the point of view of bile duct injuries, do you have the closure technique for the cystic stump? Because you might just have a big enough data set to look at the technique used and decide whether or not there are techniques that are deficient from the point of view of cystic stump closure. And the more general question was whether or not you've got NIHR portfolio adoption, because certainly for countries for centres in the UK, it would obviously facilitate data collection and support for the data collection if you've got portfolio adoption.
With regards to portfolio adoption, we have looked into that, and I think originally we felt from a time-wise and liaising with colleagues at the NIHR within the time frame of starting within a few weeks, sadly that is unlikely to be feasible, but again we can keep looking into that. With regards to the protocol and cystic duct stump closure, off the top of my head I can't remember if that's on, but certainly we will discuss that within the committee as something that we can revise and add.
Okay, lovely. And I think that with the portfolio, certainly it would be possible to get it for, there have been similar studies that have had portfolio adoption. As you say, the time frame might make it difficult, but if you inform them about the intentions of the study prospectively, they might still consider it.
That's very helpful advice, and we'll certainly get into that. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Prof. Thanks, Rich. So we'll move on to the next part of the presentation on gallbladder cancers, which is really another key feature of this cohort study. And Professor Ewan Harrison is one of the co-leads of this study based at University of Edinburgh, and is a professor of surgery and data science. Welcome, Ewan.
Many thanks, Savesh. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's wonderful to see so many people here. I'll talk briefly about incidental gallbladder cancer. We're really lucky to have the support of the IHPBA and the EAHPBA, who have taken a particular interest in this aspect of the study. So, I mean, really importantly, this is about incidental gallbladder cancer. So these are patients undergoing a cholecystectomy for an indication other than malignancy. For those that have a preoperative diagnosis of cancer, or who undergo an oncological procedure, such as a Whipple's procedure, or even a gallbladder with liver bed resection combined, they are excluded from the study. So we're interested in the incidence, in the practice around the management, and in the outcomes out to 1 year, as Ewan Griffiths and others have mentioned. It may be that in some centres, no histology is done on routine gallbladder specimens performed for benign disease. It would be important to capture that. It'd be important to capture the incidence of routine cholecystectomy for benign indications in which incidental gallbladder cancer has been identified. And that's one of the primary things we're interested in. What is the staging of that? What further staging is done after that? What are the timescales around that? Is adjuvant treatment used? Is further surgery performed, such as a liver bed resection, a lymphadenectomy, a hepatectomy, etc.? What are the outcomes of that further surgery? And then what are the 1 year, both progression-free and disease and overall survival rates for that? I mean, the incidence of this will vary in populations, but it's likely to be between 0.5% and 2%. So we're really looking to leverage this really promising to be large study in order to capture probably the largest cohort of incidental gallbladder cancer that's been looked at internationally so far. So we can take any questions about that. I also wanted to mention another couple of things. The first is the hospital level survey that will be done. So as well as patient level data, we will also be collecting facility level data, as we've done in previous studies in a separate REDCap project. And one of the things we're particularly interested in for that is the provision of laparoscopic surgery. Of course, Gecko is looking at cholecystectomy, and it's looking at both open and laparoscopic cholecystectomy. But this is an excellent opportunity to look at laparoscopic facilities, particularly across the Global South, and laparoscopic training, laparoscopic simulation facilities, etc. So that would be an important part of the project, and we'd welcome anyone who's interested in contributing to that. Finally, the data governance is becoming harder and harder for these projects over time. In the UK, as Stephen talked about, we call them audit, so we don't call them research. So in the past, we've never required formal ethical or IRB approval. We've never required formal data sharing agreements between data providers and data processors. We are providing a set of terms and conditions by which the data is contributed, and that should be available this week. That does not need to be signed, and it's there to facilitate ethics processes, and it's what we expect, for instance, in the UK and in many other countries, all that will be required by your local governance organisations, because this is pseudo-anonymized data and no patient care is being changed. For individuals who work in countries in which a formal signed data sharing agreement which complies with local laws is required, we can try and do that, but it won't be possible to do it for 1,700 hospitals. It's just not practical in an unfunded study to be able to do that. So for instance, in the past, we've had requests to comply with particular US state law or particular country level law, which would take one of the lawyers a number of days or hours in order to be able to craft an agreement to make that possible. So it may be that if you work in a country that is requiring a specific data sharing agreement, which is complicated, then we wouldn't be able to facilitate that. However, for the vast majority of hospitals, we would expect upwards of 95% of hospitals the terms and conditions which are provided, which give all of the information that is required, should be sufficient in order to contribute to the study. So I'm happy to take any questions about that, and I'll pass you back to Savesh. Thank you so much for your help with this really exciting study.
Thanks, Ewan. I think one of the questions that we had was around, that Thomas Wise has just brought up, was around a collection of videos during the study, or even a subgroup of patients or centers. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Savesh, and thank you, Tom, for the question. We've thought quite hard about video collection, or even still image collection, particularly in the assessment of the critical view of safety at the time of laparoscopic surgery. Studies, as you know, have been done in which data has been collected and an expert panel has looked at images and defined independently whether the critical view of safety has been obtained, etc. In a large study like this, on asking potential collaborators whether they thought that would be feasible or not, they didn't think it would be, broadly for two reasons. The first one was from a data governance, data sharing point of view of video, and the requirement for anonymization. And the second was a purely pragmatic one of whether hospitals had the facilities to capture and share video. Whether a subgroup of individuals, on this call and beyond, want to get together and try and do a bolt-on study looking particularly at imaging and video, that would be fantastic, and we would gladly help facilitate that. It would require a separate protocol and a separate set of ethical applications, which would be possible. And if anyone wants to get in contact about that, then please feel free to do so.
Thank you, Ewan. We'll move on to the next talk for today. It's around 1 year follow-up. I think a few speakers have briefly touched on this. And it's, I think, very rarely in a collaborative study we've ever done 1 year follow-up, and it's going to be challenging. So we've got Laura, one of the steering committee members, to speak on this. Welcome, Laura.
So thanks, Savesh. So I'm going to be talking about the 1 year follow-up as part of the study. And this is kind of unique in that it's a good duration of follow-up that typically we wouldn't have seen before. And there's been some questions about this coming so far, so hopefully we can go through some of those. So the 1 year follow-up is going to be based on the follow-up that we would routinely do, routine care. So we're going to be able to look at, say, bile duct injury and any strictures or kind of readmissions following the cholecystectomy. But we're not going to be looking for anything that's additional to routine care. So we're at the end of, and this can sometimes be an issue with the ethics committees. So at the end of the 30-day follow-up period, it will be necessary to keep a secure list of all the patients from that period, and to then go back at 1 year to see if there's any evidence of any further readmissions related to this, or if there's any evidence of further complications. We hope that if say the patient was treated in a different hospital for that, it would be routine that then the operating surgeon from the cholecystectomy should have been sent a letter. So the 1 year follow-up should just involve what's routine care, and we won't be calling patients back outside of routine care for the study. So we're just looking at what had been their course over the year following their cholecystectomy. And so the 1 year follow-up is to look at bile duct injury, which may not be initially apparent, or any further complications, readmission rates, and then we've already talked about the histology and gallbladder cancer. So we're hoping that this will allow us to look more about the longer term follow-up and information that we wouldn't have available at 30 days. And it'll also, in order to maximize follow-up, it's important that I suppose we know the hospital approval audit or ethical teams would be aware that it's a follow-up study, but we're not calling patients back outside of routine care for the purposes of the study. We'll just be looking at routine hospital records. And it is also possible, I know some people will move from one centre to another. So before the 1 year follow-up period is due to commence in 2024, it will be possible to recruit additional data collectors for this period. Because we understand that some members of the mini teams may have moved to a different hospital during that year. And those are the main points about the 1 year follow-up. So overall, it's that we're not looking for any information outside of routine care, and there won't be any additional appointments or assessments. It's just important that we keep a record of all the patients that we've included. That we can assess for the 1. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much for that, Laura. So I think it seems to be really clear that we should really keep the patient records in a safe, secure database so that we can go back at 1 year to follow them up. I guess a question from the audience, Laura, is 1 year follow-up for all patients, for patients where no complications that occurred, or is there only a selected group of patients that we should do a 1 year follow-up?
Yeah, so in all patients, we will keep a record of their name and chart number so that we can go back to their hospital notes and look for complications. And if there's no evidence of any previous complications in their charts and no letters from other hospitals, then we can assume that they had no other readmissions and that they didn't have a complicated cholecystectomy. But we do need to go back and actually determine this for each patient that was included in our each 2 week period. So we will have to go back and look for each patient, but so we will have to determine that in each case. But some patients may not have follow-up, but it is important that we check that and that at the 1 year follow-up stage.
Thank you, Laura. So we'll move on to our final talk before we move on to an exciting panel discussion with our national leads. So next is Omar to talk about REDCap, his surgical trainee up in Glasgow. Welcome, Omar.
Hello, everyone. Really nice to see everyone here and a very diverse group. I'm very happy to be talking about REDCap today. And just a little shout out for Laura and Wehan for organizing all this. Really, thank you. So in terms of REDCap, so REDCap is an online database system that secures data on a server, which is managed by the University of Edinburgh. Sorry, next slide, please. So each collaborator or hospital lead will be given a unique secure login to REDCap to be able to enter data on it. Now, in terms of logins, we get a lot of questions on when will logins be issued. So for hospital leads, the logins are being issued now, has been issued for the past month. For your collaborators to get logins, the hospital needs to fully register their team on REDCap and complete the site survey. Only then that the collaborators will receive logins. We will start sending out logins next week. So the week commencing of 24th of July for period 1 collaborators. And then thereafter, every week prior to the start of each period, the next set of collaborators will be sent logins. And as mentioned before, no patient data should be uploaded or stored on REDCap until the local registration is completed. I know some centers may allow that the data is collected on the paper CRF, which is stored securely in the hospital. And then once you have formal approval, then you can upload it to REDCap database. Now, I know this is not applicable to everyone, but just bear that in mind. And we have also created a data dictionary in our protocol that tells you every single field that is required. And it's really, this is a mirror of what is present on REDCap. So this is what it looks like. And we're looking at preoperative data, intraoperative, 30-day outcomes, bile duct injury, histology, and 1-year outcomes. Now, a lot of people will be asking, do all patients need to follow up for 1-year outcomes? Yes, every single patient will be followed up. However, the main reason for that is that we want to see how the bile duct injury and the incidental gallbladder cancer, how they do in terms of survival and complications, like a comparison to those who didn't have bile duct injury and gallbladder, incidental gallbladder data. So I'm just going to do a live REDCap demonstration. So I'm just going to share my screen because there was a lot of emails we get on how to register. So just a 5-minute quick tutorial for the hospital leads on how to register their hospital. So as you know, can you see my screen? Yeah. Sorry. Is everybody able to see my screen? No?
We can see your desktop.
Okay, wait 1 second. Right, what about now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the survey that we ask every hospital that's interested to sign up. And you enter these details and enter your hospital name. And once you enter that, we receive that on REDCap. And then our team goes through the list and then sees if there's any duplicated hospitals, if there's, like, let's say another already our hospital lead being appointed at your hospital, then we will ask you to liaise with him or her. And then we will if there's no one registered and you're the first, then we can ask you to be the hospital lead. Once that happens, in the space of 72 hours, we will send you a login, which looks like this. You will receive a login from surgery.redcap email, and then it will say your username here, and it will ask you to set up your new password account. And once that happens, it will take you to set up your new password. And it says here what kind of password they're asking you to. So we'll just enter the password here. And then you click submit. And once you're in here, this is the REDCap homepage. You go to my projects at the top left corner, and you will see that you have the Gecko team registration here. So once you click on it, you'll be able to access your record status dashboard, which already has your DAG here and allows you to do your mini application portal and site survey. So once you click on the mini application team, it will ask you to enter your hospital. So let's say we are in Edinburgh and Royal Infirmary. And then it will ask you a few details on the Gecko approvals. So let's say you have applied for the necessary local study and you are awaiting it. So, and it's just a statement to say that please don't upload until your approval is confirmed. And then you just enter your first name and then last name and whether you're a consultant or surgical trainee. So if you're a surgical trainee, you will see another form popping up to provide details for your supervising consultant. If you're already a consultant, then there's no need for a supervising consultant. Now, the ORCID is a unique identifier that allows us to identify who you are, and basically we require that because of the authorship later on, because some people might want their name spelled in a specific way. So if you go, like, my ORCID is here, so I make sure that my name is spelled how I want it to be, and that it's available for everyone to see. So, and then if I copy my ORCID and then I put it here, then that's my ORCID here, and then I'll just put in email whatever email it is. So another thing, so if you write here all zeros, like let's say here, yeah, it will still accept it because it's the right format. However, you won't be sent out logins. This person will not be sent out logins until the ORCID ID is a valid one. Even if it's missing, the logins will not be sent. So it's very important to have a valid email address and a valid ORCID for you to receive the login details for the data collection project where you can enter patient data. And then here you choose which periods you want to assign, and then click how many collaborators you have, and again enter their first name, last name, and ORCID, etc. Again, all ORCIDs and emails need to be valid for you to be able to receive a login. So, and then you can just click save and exit form. Okay, because I've not filled it out, it will give me this message. So now if you go here, you see that this is in progress. I can go and continue the site survey. And in the site survey, you just click what your current situation at your hospital is, whether it's a district or a tertiary hospital, the hospital funding, and this needs to be completed in full for us to also send you logins. And then once you've done all that, you just click save and exit form, and then that's it. And then 1 week before the start of the data collection period, of the respective data collection period for every collaborator, they will be sent out logins for them to enter the data. I will stop sharing my screen now and take any questions if you have.
Thank you, Emma, for that very wonderful presentation. I think it's really helpful to just gain some practical understanding on how to actually use REDCap, and thanks for that live demo. So I think at this stage, we'll bring in the national leads who've been working really hard to increase uptake of Gecko in their centers. So we've got Dr. Parvez Haq from India. We've got Professor Amanda Dawson is the national lead in Australia. Dr. Chikayan is a national lead in Malaysia. We've got Dr. Suliat Lawani from the national lead from Benin. So welcome everyone, and thank you for all your help so far. I think one of the questions that we really would like to ask for everyone here in the panels, how are things going, or what are some of the challenges that you face that you'd quite like to share that might be useful for all the hospital leads in other regions or other countries? Perhaps Amanda, you'd like to?
Thank you very much, Savesh, and thank you very much for all of the previous speakers. I think this has been a fascinating meeting. So from the Australian perspective, we've been very excited. This is proving to be the largest trainee-led collaborative project that we've had, and we're now up to 71 Australian sites, which is approximately 10% of Australian hospitals that perform surgery, which is fantastic and certainly the biggest project we've had so far. Our local challenge is actually our ethics approval process, which is a lot more stringent. So we need a full national ethics review, and it's classed as a greater than low risk pathway within Australia. So it's certainly a much higher level of scrutiny. Probably the other thing that is a challenge is the data transfer agreement. And currently approximately 1 in 3 Australian sites will actually need that data transfer agreement. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is our succession planning for that 1-year follow-up, and certainly applaud the necessity of keeping that really secure list. at the 12-month mark with succession planning, our mini teams will most certainly have moved on. And so being able to maintain that secure key of patients at 12 months is going to be really important for us.
Thank you, Amanda. Parvez, I think I'd quite like to bring you in here in terms of what your experiences were and some of the challenges that you faced that you like to share. And maybe some of, especially the 1-year follow-up, perhaps, in terms of what you think might work.
Yeah, Suresh, thank you so much. And really nice to be a part of this Gecko panel and the study itself. Something which really clicked for us was our experience with the COVID studies and using our hub network. The India Hub has its network of hospitals, sub-hubs in Kolkata and in Vellore. So what we're looking at is around 90 hospitals who have shown interest. I wouldn't say we've had problems. We've just had, new institutes who are joining us for the first time. And we are really excited to showcase this study to the world, our data. There are your statutory approvals, the institute, the national body, which is the Indian Council for Medical Research. We've already put in our applications. So we've been trying to encourage our local hospitals in the country is to form your teams. Remember the timeline, the dates, because the data collection period is going to start. Who is a part of the team? It's for the institute PI to decide, and you can come to a common consensus. You don't need to follow anybody's hard and fast rule. The important part is about data collection during that period of time and validation of the data at the center and by the hub itself. And we are also looking at the uploading of this data only once the ICMR approval comes through on REDCap. So that is something very important. If you look at India, cholecystectomy is one of the most common surgeries done over here. And with 90 hospitals, we should be able to do a good job over here and get you a good number of data. Also, the cases of gallbladder cancer is also quite prevalent. So let's see. Fingers crossed, we hope to do well over here, and we hope the same for everybody across the globe. And if you were to ask me about the 1-year follow-up, that was something which pinched me also. What is the need to follow up a patient who's not had a complication at 30 days? Okay, I think it's a part of the methodology. I think it is quite rational to follow up at least those who've had the diagnosis of a bile duct injury and gallbladder cancer incidentally found, so that you look at the treatment profile of these patients during this period of time. So if you look at the question and answer box, I think Professor Harrison has very clearly said that we look at the patient cohort who have complications. And if possible, if you have a follow-up of your patients at the end of 1 year, make sure you are able to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Parvez. So I think one of the key things that you've also mentioned there is that, it's key to collect your data and papers if you're sort of finding issues with getting ethics. And then once everything's all above water and you've got everything sorted, then you can start your data uploading process. Suliath is also here with us from Benin, and we've had a really fantastic engagement from Benin as well as in Africa across. So Suliath, would you like to share perhaps some of what your challenges or sort of learning experience so far from Gecko that might be useful for everyone on the call here today? Welcome. Suliath? She is on the call, however, but in the meantime, whilst waiting, Chick Ian, if Malaysia, is there anything that you'd like to share with us in terms of challenges or learning experiences that you've had from this process?
Hi, thanks for including me today. Great talk. So far, I think we've got about 17 hospitals signed up in the whole of Malaysia. In terms of challenges, because we have different hospitals, I mean, as in terms of systems. So we have the public sector, we have the university hospitals, we have army hospitals, and also a private hospital included. And hence, in terms of getting ethics approval or clearance has been a bit of a challenge, especially for the public hospitals. Still working on that. I think like it's been shared earlier on, I think before that has gone through, it's probably best to collect all the data on paper until clearance has been given and we can upload, because I think quite a few of the hospitals were concerned as to whether they should put their start of the period much later until the clearance has been approved. But I've told them to go ahead and start this 31st July on paper and just to collect the data so that we can get as much as possible and pull it into the the international data. I think the rest of the 1 year follow-up, I don't think we have problem. Most of our patients are followed up quite regularly anyways. So I think just to get on the ball of making sure one person ensures that there's no loss to follow-up, as to not lose the patients over time. I think otherwise, I think the problems faced by everyone else is pretty similar as what we see in Malaysia. Yeah.
Thank you. Sulia, think.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Actually, in Benin, our documents have already been translated in French, and we are in the process of obtaining ethical approval. One thing they ask us to provide is a paper or something from Edinburgh, like approval for running the study, even if it is registered as an audit in your country. If we can have something just to prove that it has been approved in UK, it will be good for us to add to our document for the process. We are helping our hospital leads to register their teams and the site survey. About that's currently, that's all we can tell you on the Gecko progress in our country.
Thank you so much, Sulia. So I think translations are also a key part of the Gecko study, and we've had quite a fantastic response from our national leads in translating to several different languages, and all the different translations are there on our website. So we don't have any more questions at present. And I'd quite like to thank everyone here today. It's been quite a fantastic turnout, almost close to 200 participants here today. And thank you to all our speakers and our national lead panelists who've sort of dialed in and provided a really great presentation for everyone. So we hope that has been a very useful session, and hopefully it would help sort of progress each individual sites as we move forward to launching the study formally in about 2 weeks' time. And it's not very long. And we've got, as of today, there's about 1,830 centers from about 133 countries. So it's phenomenal. I think the key would be to try and convert all these registrations into teams locally and nationally. So thank you very much, everyone here today. If you have any questions or anything, please contact the Gecko Gmail or the inquiry@globalsurg.org email address. and you've got contact details for Professor Ewan Harrison and Ewan Griffiths if you'd like to discuss any further collaboration regarding the video or imaging-based study. So thanks everyone for joining here today. I will leave you and we'll draw the session to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you.